is the list of BCS rankings going into postseason play. 2008. Oklahoma 12-1, Florida 12-1, Texas 11-1, Bama 12-1, USC 11-1, Utah 12-0, Texas Tech 11-1, Penn State 11-1, Boise State 12-0. Florida beat Oklahoma in the championship game. That eliminates OU. Texas defeated Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl in the final 15 seconds of the game. So Texas finished 12-1. Oklahoma played in the Big 12 championship game 13-1. I'm sorry. Strike Oklahoma, they lost. Florida 13-1 with the championship game win. Texas, since they did not play in a conference championship game, 12-1. Bama lost to Florida. That knocks them out. USC won the Rose Bowl over Penn State, 12-1. Really dominated a Penn State team that was 11-1 Big Ten champion. Impressive win. Forget the final score, 38-24. It was a blowout. Utah beat Bama, who was number 1 and 12-0 going into the SEC championship game. Utah beat them by 2 scores in the sugar and finished undefeated. And of course, Utah at that point was not a Power 5. They were a Group of 5 team. Texas Tech, I believe, got upset in their bowl game to finish 11-2. Otherwise, we might be awarding Texas Tech, and God rest his soul, Mike Leach, with a national championship. But I believe Texas Tech, I'm going to have to check on Texas Tech. I believe that's this year they lost to. They got upset in a bowl game against like Cal or Arizona State. And then we got to check on Boise State. So let's look at Texas Tech and Boise State. And I'm curious about the Utah schedule as well. Although, again, since the national champion has 1 loss, Utah had none. Let's give this a look. 2008 Texas Tech. Taking your calls after we go through 2006. This is, yes, there's the loss. Oh, they lost to Ole Miss. I remember that. Cotton Bowl. Yes. Yeah. So Texas Tech, done. 2008 Boise State. And Boise State was good. Man, they were ripping off the wins, huh? Oh, they lost to TCU. So that's interesting. They played back-to-back. So that's the game I was talking about, the Poinsettia Bowl. Then they played in the Fiesta Bowl. Okay, so Boise State's out since they lost the bowl game. Now, let's check out Utah. Shoot, wrong year. 2008 Utah. Okay, this schedule is not going to be anything great. That Michigan win. Michigan was awful. That was the Michigan team that went 3-9. Okay, so that's not anything. Oregon State, we'll have to look them up. They weren't ranked at kickoff. TCU, so they got a nice win against TCU, but only 13-10. Nice win against BYU late in the season, who was number 16. And, of course, that Alabama win. And because, again, the national champion, Florida, was 12-1, I'm going with Utah here because they were 13-0. With the Group of 5 schedule, if they had the same record, they would be out. But that's not the case. So your national champions of 2008, Florida, step aside because you've got to include Florida, Texas, USC.
That 2008 team is historic defense. It's up there with, 2001 Miami and 2021 Georgia. Like literally, it's probably one of the generational defense. That's how good that defense was. And as much as I'm trying to bang the drum for Utah, and it's kind of hard to do because I just don't see any of those teams you had up there scoring points on that team. That team, just the linebackers alone on that team were insane. And the one hiccup they had, we have it right there.
Yeah.
The one hiccup they have is after, probably flying high after that was one of the greatest games of Coliseum I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
The dismantling of Ohio State. They were flying high, and they played a horrible first half, and they were reading their own press clippings, and they tried to dig themselves out and came up 7 points short. That was or 6 points short. That was painful to watch. But it's weird that loss was so early in the season, and they never brought them up above 5 the rest of the year. I mean, voting was absurd that year.
Yeah. So they were, number 5 going
Unbelievable.
into UCLA
One
game.
loss on the road early in the season. And look at those scores, Mark. It wasn't like they were squeaking out wins. If I told you that USC was going to beat Ohio State 35-3, Washington 56-0, Notre Dame 38-3, that wasn't a great Notre Dame team. But I'm just saying, going and beating these teams, they were dominating teams. They were number one.
Pretty much. I see that Arizona score 17-10 is about the only one that pops out.
I can't remember back then. I'll tell you what, that's clearly an anomaly. Was somebody hurt in that game? I mean, I've got no idea.
Let's see how good Arizona was that year. They went 8-5 and beat BYU in a bowl game. So they were decent.
Everyone has those years. I mean, Georgia struggled against some pretty mediocre competition last year as well.
Sure.
I wouldn't say they weren't the best team in the country. I mean, it just happens. That's the problem. And you look at that, you look at Georgia struggling last year. You look at USC losing to Oregon State on the road after a big emotional win. That's where you got to remember, I don't care how good your team is or how good your coach is. These are games played by 18 to 23-year-old guys.
Yeah.
That, that's the mastery of being a great coach. That's how Nick Saban did what he's done for the past, the run he's had at Alabama. It shows you that you have to keep your guys tight because they're going to slip up to inferior competition. And that's why what Nick Saban came out and said the whole thing earlier, this a couple weeks ago about how they would have been the favorites in a game, the playoffs. So why weren't they in the playoffs, et cetera? It's because we see year in, year out, you see great teams get upset by teams that aren't as good. And that's why we have the playoffs. You play, you at least win your division, and hopefully your conference and then get into the playoffs. So there's not much of an argument, but I just wanted to make the point that 2008, the fact that USC did not play in 2008 with that defense. And the thing that's so hard to figure out is even in the chat today, I heard, well, they don't play defense in the Pac-12. And I used to say that, but even back in the 2000s, which was completely wrong. Some of those Stanford defenses, definitely the USC defenses, were really, really good. And Cal, some of those Cal defenses were insane. And to make blanket statements like that, well, they don't play defense. And then USC has a historic defense and they're left out of the game.
Okay. Well, there's a couple things working against them in this, and for right or wrong or not their fault. But one would be, what did Oklahoma and Florida accomplish that USC did not? They played conference championship games. So
USC can't control that. That has nothing to do with it.
I know, but that's still part of the process.
Who did they
evaluation.
Play? And who did they play?
Who did they play in the conference championship games? Florida played Alabama, who was undefeated and number one in the country.
Who lost to Utah. So they
that's after the fact. We're talking about a decision that was made prior to postseason play.
Yeah. Well, again, a 7-point loss.
Yeah, I understand you being upset about this, and you have every right to be. And I just awarded USC a national championship.
Well, I appreciate it, Mark, but
I know no one cares what I think, but hey, that's why I got a YouTube channel. I can just say whatever I want and award whatever I want. But yes, so number one, that again, they didn't play a conference championship game, so they're sitting on the sideline while those other two teams are impressing against top competition. And then the other one, what else did I have in my mind that they did not? get accomplished
Who did
there.
Oklahoma beat?
Who did Oklahoma beat? I believe Missouri. And also you got to realize that Oklahoma, so the SEC's at this point considered the best conference. So Florida's going to be there as a one-loss conference champion over anybody. And the other thing is that Oklahoma had that round robin with Texas Tech and Texas, and they both went 11-1. So when you got 3 11-1 teams, those are two really impressive wins. While, and again, I'm on your side through most of this. I'm just explaining to you what might have been going through the voters' minds.
I got a big point for you.
Let's go up to the. Hang on, just a second. Let's go up to the Pac-12 standings. So
that's gonna be my point. USC played everyone in their conference. USC played everybody in their conference.
They played everyone? Did they beat that Oregon team?
You see.
I don't remember that score.
Go back to
the schedule. They did. They beat them 44-10.
Well, I mean, they played 9 conference games, and back then there were 10 teams, and so that means USC played everyone in their conference and lost 1 game to Oregon State on the road by 6 points.
Okay.
So they beat the second best team in their conference, right?
Okay.
So that would, therefore, they pretty much won their, if you want to call it. Now, back then, did the SEC play 9? No, it's 8, just 8 conference games.
They played 8, but then they played a conference championship game.
Okay. So then a 9th game, really.
Yeah.
So USC played 9 conference games, and they played 9 conference games.
Yes.
And then Oklahoma, did they play 9 conference games?
No.
All right. So one of the 3 teams played 9 conference games and beat, because I don't think Oregon State was the second best in the conference. They're tied for second. My bad. They're tied for second best. So USC had the best record in conference, won the conference, played 9 games, just like the 2 teams you just named.
But I'm guessing that if you were an Oklahoma or Florida fan, that you would be making those same statements. I'm trying to play mediator and give you the argument for the other teams.
No, I get you. And if this defense wasn't as good, what's the best metric for defense, would you say, Mark, in college football?
What do you look at? Yards per play.
Yards per play. You want to guess what USC's yards per play in that game, that season were?
4.2.
3.5. Yeah,
that's
when dumb. I tell you this was a historic defense. I'm not just throwing that because I'm a USC fan. 3.5. That's I don't know what that's better than 2021 Georgia, and I don't know. I actually don't know if it's better than 2001 Miami.
I'm going to guess that it was, but I don't know. I know Georgia was around 4 flat.
And the rush defense, I don't remember what it was. It was disgusting. It was like 70 yards a game or 77 yards a game.
Yeah. I mean, I did a comparison of all the. Well, I didn't do a comparison. I'm sorry, of this team. Go ahead.
Well, I just don't think people when I say that 2008 defense was really good. I'm not saying like, oh yeah, hey, they were pretty good. They had some good games. No, it was insane the way that they were able to just take over games. And if you look at their scores in the games, it represents just how stifling they were. And the way they handled Penn State, and Penn State lost to Iowa, right? It was their only loss of the year.
Yes.
Otherwise, they would have been the BCS game.
Yeah.
They lost a close one at Kinnick. And like you said, I was at that Rose Bowl. My brother and I were hammered by halftime because we were drinking so much because that game was just done. At halftime, we went there, we just started celebrating, and Carroll really called the dogs off in the 4th quarter. They ended up scoring like 17 garbage points, but it would have been a heck of a lot more if USC, if he had left all the starters in and really laid one on. I think he had too much respect for Joe Pa to do that. And quite frankly, Pete Carroll rarely did that to anyone unless they were the lovely Bruins. But that Rose Bowl to me was an exclamation point on anything that wants to say, well, were they really? We had Utah and these others. What USC did to that really good Penn State team was all the validation I need for that team, along with that historic defense. I don't think that I don't think Tim Tebow's scoring a lot of points against that defense. I don't. That Tim Tebow's type, that offense they had at Florida is exactly the offense that this defense loved. The only way you could really score on this team is if you had really good passing attack. I mean, elite, like Aaron Rodgers level elite passing attack. Other than that, yeah, it was a hard time moving the ball against this USC team. And that is not what that Florida team. That was a tough, let's run at you. But I tell you that you had, Mayava and Cushing and Matthews and I'm blanking on it, Ray Malaluga. Those were our linebackers. All those guys are 6'3", 6'4", 230, 240 pounds. Timmy Tebow wasn't getting any yards in that game on the ground. So it's a shame. I'll call back later because really the biggest travesty of all time really is that 2003 game and the fact that USC was left out of that. And the fact to add a little more onto this, can you imagine if there was a 14 playoff during the Pete Carroll years? Because as good as a coach he was in season, you give Carroll 3 or 4 weeks to get ready for your team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his bowl record shows it. Everyone points to, well, you lost to Texas. Texas and Kansas State are the only two teams out of conference in 9 years that Pete Carroll lost to. And that Texas game, there's always injuries, of course, but if you look at the secondary for USC going into that game, that was one of our best offenses of all time. But it was probably nowhere near the top 5 defenses we've ever had. Everyone talked about 2005 being the greatest USC team ever. It wasn't. It was really good, but there were too many injuries. Golden Playbook, the teams I'm talking about, destroyed your Irish teams. Like every time they played except for 2005. So I don't know if you think they suck that bad. You might want to rethink that one.
Who's saying that?
Golden Playbook.
Oh,
he's a domer.
Goodness.
Yeah, those teams sucked, buddy.
We are talking about all-time great teams. That run of USC teams from 2002, and I don't even think they really had a role in 2002. That was obviously Carroll's second team, but they still beat a good Iowa team by 3 touchdowns easily in the Orange Bowl and had the Heisman Trophy winner, of course, and then they got rolling the next season. And from 2003 through 2008, my goodness, they were so talented.
I just made the mistake of looking at the chat. I listen. I know Big Ten fans out there. I know you angry because you guys never beat Pete Carroll. I know you guys are mad. And Irish fans, I know you're mad too because, well, except for that first year in 2001 when he absolutely had nobody on that team, you guys couldn't even get close except for that 2005 game. And even that, the funniest story about that 2005 Mark. I talked to a player on the team. Yeah. They went to the walkthrough the day before. And of course, we all know the grass was like this long, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Notre Dame comes out to, they come out and USC comes out in their speed cleats. And Notre Dame comes out in these screw-in cleats this deep, this big. Because they knew that, and also they'd watered the field. It was bone dry and it didn't rain. They watered the field before. These guys, these Irish, along with their green jerseys, they pulled every little stunt they could to try to slow USC down, and they still lost.
It was a great game, though. They lost, but
did you ever see that Zibikowski punt? You know what I'm talking about? When he runs back for a touchdown?
Yes, I have.
They were not one. There were 2 blatant clips on that return. And the thing is on a kick return is when there is a block in the back, it's right in front of everybody. Like you cannot miss that call. And there wasn't one, but there were 2 that sprung that kick, which kept them in the game. It was a good game. It was a great game. Brady Quinn was just throwing dimes in that game. It just playing out of his mind. But I thought it was funny when I heard a story that not only we all knew they grew the grass really long. But this tragedy is Desmond Reed, a backup running back for SC, who was really good, blew his knee out on a kick return that got caught up in that turf, non-contact, and tore his ACL because they decided they wanted to do some gamesmanship and possibly ruin a kid's career. So, but anyway, yeah, 2008 USC. Georgia fan, Miami fan, come at me all you want, but I got the numbers to prove it. And the NFL, there's like 24 guys on that team that went on to play in the NFL. 24. So it was a pretty good team, and it's a shame they didn't get a chance to play Florida and see who was the best team in the country.
Yeah, that would have been phenomenal.
And LSU, you're next. That's in the next segment. That's 2003. We'll get there later.
Yeah, and again, just to reiterate what you had to say, that Penn State team was not a ultra super talented team, but they were a really good team. They were definitely a top 5 team in the country in that range, and that game was not 38-24 close. That looks good for Penn State, that they hung in there on the scoreboard, but blown out 31-7, third quarter, forget it, done. Could have scored 50. And that Ohio State team, that was no vintage Ohio State team, but they still went to the Fiesta Bowl and took Texas down to the last 15 seconds of that game and would have won the game, I think, if Beanie Wells would have played the whole game. He had 130 yards rushing at halftime. So not a great Ohio State team, but a really good one, a top 8 team in the country, and USC just blew their doors off, destroyed.
Mark, so you know about this probably more than some of your Ohio State brethren. What is with the Buckeyes coming to the Coliseum?
It's not good. It's not pretty.
I just recently saw it going back farther, the trouble that they've had in the Coliseum. It's scoring points. Like, I think there were like 3 or 4 games in a row where you guys scored like 3 points going back at the Coliseum.
Well, I'm trying to think what other games, because it would be they both played in 89 and 90. And so the 89 game was at the Coliseum, and that was 42-3. They got crushed in that game.
And there was one more, I think, in the late 70s or in the 70s sometime, where it was Ohio State only scored 3 points. Now, I don't think USC scored that many points, but it was just like they're having trouble scoring
in the regular season in the 70s.
Let me see. I saw it. Well, anyway, you got it. I could put in the chat, but
USC, Ohio State. Yeah, they played back-to-back years in outside of postseason play, 89-90, and then they played in 08-09.
Okay.
And the other were all Rose Bowl games, besides, of course, the Cotton Bowl game they just played.
Okay, well, so it was 2 then. Oh, yeah, it's only 2 then, but I don't know what's going on with them.
Well, that 08 Ohio State team, again, was not a vintage Ohio State team by any stretch, but they were really good, and the team was loaded with NFL players, plenty of NFL players on that Ohio State team, and they did tie Penn State for the Big Ten championship and did take a Texas team that finished number 3 or 4 in the polls, 12-1, down the last 15 seconds of the game in the Fiesta Bowl. But that 89 team, that's just when John Cooper started. That was the second year, and they were okay. They got better that season, but they finished 8-4. They were not a great team, but they were okay.
So this is why you didn't know, because you're not old enough. You have to go back to 1964 and 63. They also had a home and home.
Okay.
In Columbus, the Buckeyes beat the Trojans 17-0. But the year prior, in 63, Ohio State again only scored 3 points, and USC scored 32 at the Coliseum. So if you total up those 3 games, the Coliseum, over decades, of course, looks like just over decades and decades. And then another one in 60 and 59. In 59, Ohio State scored 0 points. They lost 0-17. So I'm telling you, Buckeyes, you guys got to fight at the end. You got to find the end zones in the Coliseum coming up.
What was the game in 1960 in Columbus?
60 was 20-0 Buckeyes.
Okay.
So it looks like the Trojans can't find the end zone years ago.
No. Yes, a long time ago.
But back then, USC couldn't find the end zone in Columbus, and the Buckeyes couldn't find the end zone at the Coliseum. But I'm excited. We'll see you guys in 2025. That's going to be amazing. My second trip to the shoe. I can't wait.
Yeah, it should be something else when those two.
All right, so all you guys out there, all you SEC fans that say they don't play defense out in the Pac-12, I just named for you in 2008, probably one of the best, if not, in my opinion, humble opinion. I think it's 2001. I think 2001 Miami with their players, and the jury's still out in the NFL with some pretty amazing dogs
Yeah.
The USC guys played a long time in the NFL, but none of them are Hall of Famers. But you have Hall of Famers from the Miami team, and we'll see what the Georgia team. But as far as in college, what that 2008 USC football defense did, just historic, and people need to realize that.